Am I the asshole for blowing up on my husband over a prank? She's a female 25, husband, a male 27, is into prank. My husband went too far with his pranks a few times, like when he pretended that he forgot the keys to our house after our wedding, or when he took me to another restaurant for our engagement party, but I was surprised when no one came. And you still went on with the wedding. Why? We just had our first baby a month ago. Last week, he stopped helping with the baby suddenly and was looking upset and just avoided me for 2 days. I tried to talk to him, but he refused to say what was wrong until I snapped. He told me his mom said that our baby doesn't really look like him and suggested that he secretly do a DNA test. He said he did it without making me notice and got the results 2 days ago. And it turned out our son isn't his and that he'll be moving out of the house and will contact an attorney in the morning.
And it was a fucking prank, wasn't it? Wow.
Said that he had a fetish for driver's licenses and would buy them from random women when he went on his work trips. He admitted it was bizarre, but said that there was something erotic about holding something that left someone else feeling so vulnerable. He also said that he would burn the driver's licenses in the furnace later that night. When I told him that I had given them to my lawyer already, he completely lost it. He packed some clothes, got into his car, and took off. Based on what he said and packed, I get the feeling he won't be coming back. I partly feel like he had a point that I shouldn't have compared his weird fetish to cheating or given his property away to my lawyer when it might be evidence of such.
I'm sorry. Wait, she did everything right. I mean, honestly, terrifying.
I would have called the cops, not the lawyer.
I would literally think that
Serial
he was
killer.
a serial killer.
Yeah.
Like, that is so scary.
My husband and I have had a rocky marriage and are going through a divorce. I've long suspected him of infidelity because he travels constantly, leaves at weird hours when home, and even had 3 different women file police reports against him a few years ago.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah,
Start there.
She slipped that one in.
And one other thing, just a 3, please. Anyway.
Charges got dropped, and I eventually believed he was a victim of a witch hunt and moved on. I needed some red wine to make some sangria and asked my daughter to get it out of my husband's room. She came back 10 minutes later and looked really worried. I asked her what was wrong, and she handed me a small pouch. Apparently, it was tucked between the liquor storage cabinet and the wall.
This is sketchy.
I confronted my husband about it this afternoon. He said that he had a confession.
Storytime about how I crashed my dad's really expensive car. So a little background information. My mom had just got remarried to my stepdad 3 years ago, and he was this rich asshole who owned a bunch of food trucks and thought he was the shit. Well, at the time I also had a boyfriend, and we had only been dating for like a month and a half. But my boyfriend would always beg me to let him drive my stepdad's car, and I always said no because that was like his child. Like, he had children. He could care less about them. His car was more important. Anyway, so the one weekend my parents are out of town, and one of my friends was throwing a graduation party. So that whole day my boyfriend was trying to talk me into taking the car, and I already knew where my stepdad hid the keys. So I just decided I wouldn't drink that night and I would just take the car. He kept asking me if he could drive, but clearly I said no, because this kid literally told me that he crashed the first 2 cars that he had. So we get to the party, we're having a good time, and one of my friends tells me that everybody's taking pictures with my car outside. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I crashed my dad's very expensive car. So like I said, everybody's taking pictures of the car, but I decided to let it go at first. I mean, there was one point where I went outside just so that way I could kind of let everybody know, hey, you're taking pictures with my car. Well, half an hour later, my boyfriend and I decided to leave, and he's obliterated. Like, we probably got 50 feet from her house, and then I had to stop the car so that way he could get out and throw up in somebody's yard. Anyway, so he gets in the car, we're on the way back to my house, and my house was like a 20-minute drive away. Well, we were 5 minutes from my house. At this one intersection, I get a green light and I go to make a right, and I accidentally hit a car turning out of the bar parking lot. So I'm literally freaking the fuck out. And my boyfriend's in the seat next to me crying for some reason. So the guy in the other car calls the cops. The cops show up, they call my stepdad and my mom. My boyfriend went to the hospital, he had alcohol poisoning. Well, my boyfriend told his mom that it was all my fault and I'm grounded for 6 months. Story time about why I beat up my best friend. So a little background information. Her and I had been best friends since we were in 7th grade. Her family was rich, mine was poor, and at first she was a really good friend. She was always there for me whenever I needed her, until our freshman year of high school, which is when her and I started hanging out with boys. Now, my mom was kind of strict. She wouldn't really let me hang out with boys, but her mom was more lenient about her hanging out with boys. Every weekend, she would throw a party at her house, and she would throw them in her attic because one, it was huge, and two, her parents didn't give a fuck what she did up there. Anyways, she would always offer to do my hair and makeup before the party started, which always made me really excited because I never really put any work into my physical appearance. Well, little did I know, the only reason why she would offer to do my hair and makeup at these parties was so that way she could make me look like shit in front of all the boys. So after that, I taught myself how to do my own makeup and do my own hair, like for part 2. Part 2 about why I beat up my best friend. So like I said, I learned how to do my hair and makeup, and she went on vacation for like a month straight. Well, when she came home, she threw another party, and she was like, don't worry, after I'm done getting ready, I'll do your makeup and do your hair. And I was like, no, it's fine, I got it. She literally looks at me and she goes, are you sure? You don't really know how to do that. Like, it'll probably look really bad. And I'm like, why the fuck would you say that? She goes, no, like, I don't mean it to be rude. It's just that, like, I want you to look good in front of the boys and stuff like that. Like, sis tried to talk me into getting a shower for a full, like, 20 minutes. So after that, the whole night, she's literally being a pick-me girl. She's making all these comments about me in front of the boys, and I just keep brushing them off until her next party. We got ready, and I put on these expensive shoes that I had just bought, and she goes, wow, you just, like, really like to copy my style, don't you? So she starts making comments that whole night about how my family's poor and stuff like that, and she threw up all over my shoes. So I dumped the trash can that everybody had threw up in that night on her, punched her in the face, but like 2 months later, she came to my house and apologized. Story time about how my dad was on the news, and now everybody knows my last name. So a little background information. This all happened whenever I was in 6th grade. This all happened on a Tuesday night. So I had school the next day. Well, my dad had went to work earlier in the day. Well, around 10 o'clock at night, we hadn't heard from my dad all day, which was super weird for him because he was always home around 10 o'clock. And even if he wasn't, he still would have kept in contact with us and let us know where he was at. So at this point, my family and I were really scared, and we're thinking that something happened to him. I was calling and texting him, my mom was calling and texting him. My whole family was pretty much trying to get a hold of him. Like, we had called all the hospitals to see if he was there. We called police stations to see if he might have been in jail, or if they had his last name in the system. So nobody had heard or seen from him. So we all went to sleep that night hoping that he would show up in the morning. So the next day after I got home from school, my mom came home from work and she had told me about this phone call that she got. Like for part 2. Part 2 of how my dad was on the news, and now everybody knows my last name. So like I said, my mom had gotten home from work and she told me about this phone call that she got while she was at work. So apparently one of her coworkers called her and said, hey, I think I saw your husband on the news. So after that, she showed me the news article, and I couldn't even believe what I was reading. So I guess my dad had been drinking, and he went to an auto repair shop and stole a car, because I guess the keys were left in the door of the car. And what makes this even worse, the car that he stole had 2 guns in the trunk. And they weren't 2 pistols, these were 2 big ass guns that were fucking loaded. Oh wait, I forgot something. So before this, he had been at the strip club, and somehow he ended up in pink lingerie. Guys, I cannot make this shit up. So he was driving around and he decided to park right in the middle of an intersection, and it was literally causing a whole fucking scene. There were people with their kids worried as hell. So after that, a few people called the cops, like for part 3. Part 2 about how my dad was on the news and now everybody knows my last name. So like I said, my dad parked in the middle of an intersection and people were calling the cops. So when the police arrived, my dad was half passed out in the car. This happened in like the middle of broad day, like there's traffic everywhere. So when they finally get up to the car, my dad is literally slumped in the driver's seat. There was a bottle of whiskey in the door and it was completely empty. When they went to arrest him, he started resisting. He was screaming a bunch of profanities at them and started kicking them, threatening them with guns, which made the situation worse because my dad had no clue that there were any guns in the back of the car. So that just made the police think that they were his. So they take my dad to jail and he has like 7 charges against him. But we were happy because we knew where he was. Well, the worst part is, so the next day when I went to school, people were coming up to me asking if that was my dad on the news. Some people were even making fun of me because of what he did. And